is no difference in our aim. We are resolved to work together, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans. We will do whatever is needed to protect our nation. Nothing is more urgent. I commend the President for the work he has done in rallying the world. We are grateful to the many nations who are standing with us tonight. Together we will defeat this most insidious of threats. We will be fierce in the defense of our ideals. We will not sacrifice the freedoms that have sustained this nation for more than 2 centuries. We must not punish entire groups for the actions of a misguided few. Just as we are united tonight against terrorism, so too must we be united against the acts of hatred towards innocent Arab Americans and Muslims, and all of those who have come to our country seeking opportunity. Hardship and heartbreak are not new to us. We Americans have endured great challenge and struggle, yet none has ever broken us. Our greatness in times of trouble is what distinguishes us as a nation. Tonight, the President has called us again to greatness. And tonight, we answer that call.
Ordinarily, when the President of the United States addresses a joint session of Congress, the leaders of the opposition party gives a statement, and they respond. Tonight, there is no opposition party. We stand here united, not as Republicans and Democrats, not as Southerners or Westerners or Midwesterners or Easterners, but as Americans. I guess there are those in the world that thought this would pull us apart. We would start blaming each other and we wouldn't come to each other's aid. Well, we saw it in New York City today. Firemen and policemen and volunteers, men and women from all over America and other countries were there together, working to recover from this horrible, horrible incident. There's been a lot of sorrow, a lot of tears. We've all grieved together because it was not New Yorkers or Pennsylvanians or Virginians or military men and women or these volunteers that lost their lives. It was all of us. We've all suffered. But now we must pull together. The Congress has already started to acting in concert with this President of the United States. Tonight, he gave us a call to action. He said all the right things. He reached out to those that are grieving. He gave a challenge to us here in America. He asked for our patience. And he told those that would heap terror on America and the world that we will not stand for that. We will fight for freedom here at home and all around the world. Some people say maybe we're waving the red, white, and blue and the flag too much on our cars and on our homes and in our businesses and in our schools. It's not just about the flag. It's about those that died. It's about those that are going to fight for freedom and to stop this reign of terror. It's one way we can embrace those that have gone and those that are going to do the right thing. It's not a trite phrase, and I've heard it all over America this last week. We are together, and we ask that God bless America.
Senators Daschle and Lott. December 7th, 1941, the day that will live in infamy, brought President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to an address before Congress, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt asked for a declaration of war. This September night in 2001, President Bush went before Congress and spoke of a long war. He did not, this night at least, ask for a declaration of war from the United States Congress. We go back to Bob Schieffer.
You know, Dan, I thought that the Republican leader in the Senate, Trent Lott, sort of said it all just now. He said tonight there is no opposition party. I'd also like to say something else. I thought this speech was a very businesslike speech. It was exactly what was called for, it seems to me, at this point in time. All too often, not just this president, but all presidents, they have these speech writers and these image makers who put these cute and clever little phrases into speeches. There was none of that tonight. This was all business. The president laid out in very business-like language what he expected of the terrorists and of the Taliban, and in very direct and I thought very reassuring language, he laid out to the American people what is ahead. You know, Dan, this is the most powerful nation in the world, and we have the greatest army and the greatest technology in the world. But what the enemies of America sometimes misunderstand, and what they should fear, is American resolve, because that, in the end, is what will resolve this. In the end, it will be what brings to, as the president said tonight, brings these people to justice.
Thanks, Bob. We go to CBS News White House correspondent John Roberts. John, a question. The president did not tonight ask for directly sacrifice from each and every American, as was the case when World War II began. Has there been any talk, has there been any thought at the White House for a total mobilization of the country for such things as war bonds, perhaps even a draft?
Well, no, Dan, the president hasn't talked at all in those terms. And in fact, just a couple of days ago, he seemed to go in the other direction to suggest that he hopes that Americans don't have to sacrifice at all. And tonight, in his speech, reinforcing that he wants people to go about their lives, he hopes that it will return to some semblance of normal, though after what happened last Tuesday, we may have to completely redefine the meaning of the word normal. But Dan, the president, I think, tonight tried to tell the country there are going to be some sacrifices to be made in the days, weeks, months, perhaps even years ahead. But he seemed to suggest that those would be of the military variety. And what he really seemed to be doing this evening is to really say to the American people, we need to support all of these efforts. We need to support the military efforts. We need to support the law enforcement efforts. We need to support the efforts of government and financial institutions to put the squeeze on terrorists, to choke off their funding, to choke off their safe havens, to flush them out, as he has so often said, or smoke them out, as the president has said, get them on the run so that we can get them. But Dan, in terms of a personal sacrifice of the average everyday American, he hasn't gone down that road, at least not yet.
We go back to the Pentagon and David Martin. David?
Dan, there was one hole in the speech, and that was the evidence that al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden are behind this. He said, the evidence we have gathered all points to al-Qaeda and its leader, Osama bin Laden, but none of the evidence is outlined in this speech. And I think that is one thing that the U.S. is going to have to do publicly. That means you have to come up with evidence that is not classified intelligence, and so much of the evidence right now is classified intelligence, and I think they're going to still have to work very hard on making a public presentation they can give to the American public and to the world, showing exactly why everybody in the U.S. government is so convinced that Osama bin Laden is the man.
Bob Schieffer back on Capitol Hill.
Well, you know, Dan, I think one thing they're not going to have to explain to the American people is why we got into this. You know, we spent most of that 10 years we were involved in Vietnam saying, now explain to me again why it is we need to be in Vietnam. During the Somalia thing, why is it we are here? Americans know why we are embarking on this, because innocent Americans, any one of us could have been in one of those buildings. Any one of us might have been on one of those airplanes. Innocent Americans were cut down without warning on American soil. So the reason we are embarking on this, in this particular one, Dan, I think will require no explanation.
Bob, point well taken. In the phrase that Winston Churchill once used, some people in the past have occasionally accused President George Bush of terminological inexactitude. Terminological inexactitude. No one can say this was inexact tonight. It could not have been clearer what the president laid out. In the more than 200-year history of this country, few presidents have faced the kind of challenge that George Bush now faces and the kind of challenge he's laid out for the American people. I'm Dan Rather. In the few seconds we have remaining, there is no question that this will be a long test of the American character, a test of leadership amid a grave national emergency. No American can walk away from this tonight and not be aware We are at war. It is a grave national emergency, and what the President laid out stretches a long way before us. After what the President called a direct attack on our freedom and security, the country is more united than ever. We will see now if the President and the nation can maintain that unity.
This is CBS.